Forum Communications Company is proud to be a part of the Trust Project. Learn more at thetrustproject.org. Hey folks, before we get started, I just wanted to tell you, you can unlock unlimited access to political news, commentary, opinion, and a whole lot more at inforum.news/port for only 99 cents a month for your first 3 months. Hurry, get this limited time offer at inforum.news/port now. This podcast is brought to you by the North Dakota Petroleum Foundation. From heating our homes and powering our vehicles to cell phones, clothing, and medical equipment, oil and natural gas makes everyday life better. North Dakota Oil and Natural Gas, advancing the possibilities. Learn more at ndpetroleumfoundation.org. Welcome to Plain Talk and happy Monday to you. With me is, he's currently a member of the state legislature, Michael Howe, but he's also, this cycle, he's running to be Secretary of State. He has two opponents in the Republican primary. A gentleman by the name of Marvin Lepp, who was on the podcast just recently, is running, challenging Michael for the Republican nomination. And then on the Democratic side, Jeffre Powell, who is an administrator for Mayville State University. He is seeking the Democratic NPL nomination unopposed, and so obviously will be facing the winner of the Republican primary in the general election. And I don't know, elections are a big thing, right? I mean, since 2020, we've heard so much about election integrity, about stolen elections and everything else. Well, in North Dakota, the top election official for the state is the Secretary of State. But this race is about more than that. The Secretary of State also administers a lot of important functions of state government, like business filings. The Secretary of State stands astride political, when you go and you're looking up the financial reports that candidates file, that's maintained by the Secretary of State's office. The Secretary of State sits on a number of important boards, not the least of which is the State Industrial Commission. So it's a big job. And here to talk with me about why he wants to do that job and respond to some of the things that his opponents are saying is Michael Howe. Mike, how you doing?
Rob, I'm doing well. How are you?
Excuse me. Why? I got something stuck in my throat this morning. I am doing well, and I wanted to talk to you. I mean, first of all, what are you hearing? You've been out on the campaign trail for a while. You've been endorsed by the NDGOP party. You're seeking the primary nomination here in the election that's coming up in 8 days now, as we record this. So, what have you been hearing from voters? I mean, what do they want from their Secretary of State? And we should also acknowledge Al Jagger, who has been on the job since the early 90s. The reason why this is a race this year in a lot of ways is because he decided not to run again. So this is the first time North Dakotans are going to have a new name at the Secretary of State in a long, long time.
Yeah, I announced my campaign late January, traveled the state, did the district convention circuit. My odometer on my pickup now is over 8,500 miles traveled. North Dakota is a very large state, Rob. From Wahpeton to Williston, that's a wide swath of geography there. And I've had a great time going across the state, hearing from people, listening to what they have to say about the Secretary of State's office. And what I'm hearing is people want to know more about their elections, and rightfully so. So as I'm out there campaigning, what I would like to do as Secretary of State is be more open and transparent with that process, educate the public as to how their vote is being counted accurately, securely, and fairly. There's a lot of misinformation out there, as of course we live in the 21st century. There's access to all sorts of information, misinformation, disinformation. From our Secretary of State's office, if we can make that process open and transparent, I think that's going to help eliminate confusion and just a better education of the public of how our elections are run here in North Dakota.
There's a couple of parts when you talk about elections being open and transparent. One part of that is obviously the act of voting in and of itself, but the other part of it is the campaigns. And I want to talk about both, but let's talk about voting first. First of all, the 2020 election, it's become, a lot of people claim, certainly the former president, Donald Trump, claims it was stolen. Do you believe that? Was the 2020 election fair?
Well, I think we need to discuss why people are believing that. We have President Trump saying that, but the 2020 election in a lot of states was different than any election they have participated in. There were executive orders, laws were changed. If you look at absentee ballots, the signature requirements and ID requirements were loosened. So there were changes there that I think helped dilute the public's trust in the election process. Was the election stolen? Joe Biden was elected president of the United States. I supported Donald Trump and voted for him in 2016. I voted for him in 2020. My vote counted here in North Dakota and was counted accurately, securely, and fairly. I'm very confident about that. It's hard for me, Rob, to speak about what happened in other states. I wish Donald Trump would have won the 2020 election. I don't think we'd have gas at $4.60 right now. I don't think inflation would be what it is. President Trump's policies for North Dakota were very beneficial. And if you look at that administration too, Rob, we have never had the type of attention on North Dakota from administration like we did from the Trump administration. It seemed like weekly we had visitors within that administration coming to North Dakota with Senator Hoven or Senator Kramer and Representative Armstrong. So it was great to have that spotlight here in North Dakota and feel like they were paying attention to us.
Do you feel like there are steps that need to be taken in the state of North Dakota to make our elections more secure?
I think there always can be steps you can take. Now, what we in the legislature will have to decide as we set our election laws is, and something I've been advocating for on the campaign trail is, I'm for any policy, Rob, that makes it easier to vote but harder to cheat. So I'm willing to look at our entire process, but let's make it fall into those two premises. Will it make it easier to vote and make it harder to cheat? But as far as our current process, I'm very comfortable with it. But that's how it stands here in 2022. Things will change. We know that. But I will look at everything through a lens of will it make it easier to vote and harder to cheat?
When I interviewed Jeffre Powell, who is potentially, if you win the primary, is your general election opponent, and one thing that he told me is that when Republicans talk about election integrity, he said, and this is a quote, it's a code word for voter suppression. And so he talked a lot about North Dakota's voter ID laws, which passed in the not so distant past, and were even the subject of litigation that reached the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, the Supreme Court the courts have largely allowed those laws to stand. And today in North Dakota, you need an ID to vote. But speak to that a little bit, because it seems to be that warring where, I mean, to me, I look at something like voter ID laws, and I mean, to me, that makes sense, right? You have to, we have requirements. If you want to vote in North Dakota, you have to be of a certain age, and you have to be a citizen of North Dakota. You have to be a citizen of the United States of America. And if we're going to have those requirements to vote, then I don't understand why we wouldn't have a very simple mechanism for verifying those things, that you live where you say you live and you are a resident, and we do that with an ID card. I don't think that's voter suppression, but yet that's so much of the debate is efforts to, we have this debate saying we got to do more to make sure our elections are secure. But if we do that, then we're racist, or we're trying to suppress the vote or whatever. Speak to that debate a little bit for me.
I strongly support North Dakota's voter ID law. I think we have the best voter ID law in the country. If you are like you said, a U.S. citizen and a resident of the state of North Dakota, I think North Dakota is the easiest place in the country to vote. If you aren't those two things, I think it's really hard to vote in the state of North Dakota, and that's a good thing. If you meet the qualifications, it's very easy to vote in North Dakota, and that's how it should be. That's how I would like it to stay. But to say it's voter suppression or election integrity is a code word for voter suppression, I don't buy that. I think the public, in fact, I know the public. Like I said, I've been on the campaign trail now for 5 months. They want the integrity of our elections to be secure. They want these things. If you talk to an overwhelming majority of North Dakotans, they are happy with our voter ID law. You look at Washington, D.C. and Congress this past winter. They were trying to pass a national election policy to ban voter ID. That'd be extremely unpopular here in North Dakota. I contend across the country. And thankfully, Senators Hoeven and Kramer voted against that. And North Dakota's voter ID law is the lay of the land right now. And I will work to ensure it stays that way.
Do you feel like, for instance, we have we have the requirement for voter ID. It seems like a lot of the argument about that has been centered around whether or not it's easy to get an ID, right? I think that's especially the argument that's the court. The political argument's been a little bit more broad than that. But specifically, the argument in court has been focused on, well, it's really hard for some people in our state to get a voter ID. Now, I do think we've done some initiatives since then. We have like a traveling, the Department of Transportation has had a, sort of, I don't know what they call them, like mobile clinics almost, where they bring, the equipment they need to issue IDs to some of these communities that are a long ways. I mean, like you were just saying, we're a big state. We got some long roads home. For people who live in the rural parts of the state, or maybe live in our tribal communities, it could be a long ways to get to the DOT. So they're kind of trying to bring the DOT to them. I think that's a really good initiative. In addition to that, what are other things that we can do to make that process easier?
Well, another thing the DOT is doing, they're having mobile, or not mobile, they're having kiosks across the state. So it's not necessarily at the DMV site. I know where I live here in the eastern part of the state, West Fargo, I think there's 3 or 4 kiosks inside gas stations if you need to quickly renew your license. I know there's sites all over the state of North Dakota for that. There's plenty of access to get an ID. I know working with our tribes, they have, like you said, that mobile unit will go to the tribal lands and offer that opportunity for them. To say it's hard to get an ID in North Dakota, I haven't heard that. I haven't seen that.
Let's talk for a minute about campaign transparency, and that's been a big issue. We have a debate going on about some of the independent spending that's happening in particularly some of the legislative races across the state, where Governor Burgum has a political action committee where he's doing some things. There's another independent committee, the Brighter Future Alliance. People have divergent points of view on that. And I got to tell you, as a member of the news media, I think we could do more when it comes to reporting requirements for candidates. I think that we could report more often. I think we could report more thoroughly. I don't know why every penny in and every penny out couldn't be reported at least every couple of weeks. What are your thoughts on that? Your office maintains those records. When we go and we look up, how much such and such a committee has raised, or such and such a candidate, we go to what would be your website if you were Secretary of State. Do you have any ideas on how that process can be improved? Do we need more reporting?
Certainly. I think it gets back to that transparency point, Rob. I believe there was a couple bills in the legislative session in 2021 that originated in the House, that passed the House, and I support it. I think you're alluding to who's contributing to a PAC, or where that money is going to. I supported something like that. I would, if I'm fortunate enough to be North Dakota's next Secretary of State, and that's brought forward to the legislature. Our office would certainly work with the legislature to make that process work as it's intended. Transparency is a good thing. And I wouldn't have any problem with that, to show exactly where these dollars are going. Fundraising is an aspect of campaigns. I think fundraising shows you're a credible candidate. But if we're going to have that in place, I think the public has the right to know where these funds are coming from. And as a candidate and a Secretary of State, I wouldn't have any problem making that change in law, or making that being open and transparent.
Marvin Lepp, who's your opponent in the Republican primary, when I spoke to him, you said that you were satisfied with the way North Dakota's election process worked. He said that he's unsatisfied with it, and he flagged some issues. He suggested that the company, the contractor that provides the software for our voting machines, was able to remotely access those machines. He was talking about some other issues as well. I don't know how familiar you are with his accusations, but I mean, those are some of the things he's saying, that our system has too many holes in it, The software that's being used is outdated. The machines that are being used is outdated. How do you respond to that?
Our voting machines were first put in and first put to use in 2020. I know we did have outdated machines. The legislature funded that, I believe, in the 2019 legislative session, and then we had new voting machines for 2020. So if that's outdated, that's news to me. And if that is true, well, let's certainly take a look at that and go back to the legislature. But as far as I know, we had new voting machines and a new system and software in place for the 2020 election.
Let's talk for a moment about the other jobs that the Secretary of State does. One consistent complaint I've heard from people are business filings. They take a long time to get done. I think in the past, Secretary Jagger has faced some criticism for being maybe slow to embrace technology to make some of those processes easier. As you look at, in all due respect to Jagger, who I think overall has done has served North Dakota very, very well, but nobody's perfect. As you look at some of that aspect of the job today, the websites, the business filing, stuff like that, do you see things that need to be improved, and can you talk about them specifically?
Sure. And yeah, it's no secret. There were criticisms within the Secretary of State's office the last decade about business filings. Now, to Secretary Jagger's credit and the entire staff, I think they've improved that by leaps and bounds, especially over the last 4 years. Now, they developed the First Stop website. I think 97% of business filings are now done online. Let's try to shoot for that 100%. I know there's reasons maybe for the 3% that still does have to require paper, but let's take a look at that. Make it be 100%. Turnaround times, you're right. Several years ago, it was 7-8 weeks. As I'm talking with business owners now, I've heard anywhere. Sometimes they get their filing back in 3 days. Sometimes it's 10 days. It's really about that week-long stretch. My goal as Secretary of State, let's lower that number. Instead of 3 to 10, let's try to make it 1 to 3 days. We can always strive for that. And again, there's going to be things that pop up where it's not always going to be under a week. But let's certainly strive for that. The website component, again, I talked about First Stop. To me, that seems okay. Now, if you look at the broader Secretary of State's website, we talked about transparency and looking up campaign filings. To me, that seems a little clunky. I think we can have a makeover of the Secretary of State's website as a whole. I believe last time I checked the homepage, there was still a message about the office being open from June of 2020 because of COVID. A revamp of the website. Let's make it user-friendly for everyone. Looking back to my previous elections, I know in 2020, people were having trouble accessing the results as they came in, or they weren't coming in fast enough. Let's improve on that. Let's make that easy to find. Let's make campaign contributions easier to find. If you talk to folks in the IT business, which I certainly am not, you talk to folks that build websites, they say the mark of a good website, you can find what you're looking for in under 3 clicks. I don't think we're at that point right now, but let's strive to get there. And like I said, I am not the IT expert, but let's bring those people in. Let's work with the business community also, Rob. Let's have those conversations with entrepreneurs and businesses that are registering every year, or starting multiple businesses. Let's make it work for them. Ultimately, it's for them. In the state of North Dakota, we've been lauded as a pro-business state for decades through 30 years of Republican leadership. We've had low taxes. We've had stable regulation. We've been a very business-friendly climate. The Secretary of State's office, we're a small part of that, but let's hold up our end of the bargain too, and make sure that North Dakota is the most business-friendly, most pro-business state in the country.
Let's talk a little bit about the Secretary of State serving on some of these boards and commissions, specifically like the State Industrial Commission. As you look at that, I mean, what's your philosophy approaching that? And it's a little unique. I mean, all of a sudden you have, the State Industrial Commission regulates oil and gas development in the state of North Dakota as just one example. That's not really something normally you would think of, a policy area that you would think of when it comes to the Secretary of State. So Speak to that a little bit. You're on the State Industrial Commission. You're on some of these other boards and commissions at the State Historical Society, for instance. How, or not the society, now I'm completely blanking on the board. Is it the State Historical Board? I don't know. Speak to that part of the job.
Well, I think you're referencing the Land Board, I believe. The Secretary of State does not serve on the Industrial Commission. The Industrial Commission,
that's right.
Governor,
Gosh darn
the
it.
Commissioner, and the Attorney General. But yes, the Land Board.
The Land Board, yeah.
Land Board. Yep, yeah, that's okay.
I'm having quite a morning, I'll tell you. I knew that. I don't know where my head's at.
No, that's okay. It's Monday today, Rob. No, yes, the Land Board's made up of the Governor, Department of Public Instruction, State Treasurer, Attorney General, Secretary of State. And the Land Board, if you look at the makeup of the Land Board, Rob, it's going to look drastically different than it did just a couple of years ago. Drew Wrigley is our Attorney General. I'm confident he'll be reelected. Secretary of State will have a new Secretary of State. Treasurer Beadle's been there 2 years. We've got a new Land Commissioner, Joe Herringer, took over for Jody Smith. So the makeup of the board is going to look drastically different than it did not so long ago. But they oversee the state lands. There are mineral development, oil development, ag development that funds our public education. We all know the challenges that our ag producers face, our oil producers face from outside our borders here in North Dakota. My role on the Land Board, I don't want to present any more challenges to those folks in that industry. We want them here in North Dakota. We benefit. They fund our public education. Now, that's not to say let's turn a blind eye and let them do whatever they want to our lands. Nor would those producers want that. That only harms their industry also. But let's be a willing partner, a friendly partner, to make sure it works for everybody and it funds our priorities.
Do you feel like there's a part of the job that you're excited about, or you're interested in, or you're concerned about? Maybe, I don't know. That we're not talking about, right? The Secretary of State wears a lot of hats. So what's a part of this job or part of this gig that you think the public maybe overlooks?
Yeah, well, there's over 40 different duties within the Secretary of State's office. Now, don't quiz me and ask me what are all 40 duties, because I won't be able to tell you all of them. But getting back to the business side of this, the Secretary of State's office and Secretary Jagger has said the Secretary of State's office is the front door to every business. When you have people coming to North Dakota to start a business, or you have a college graduate that's taking a risk and starting a business, I would love for our office to be just a small part of that and help them and watch them succeed. Business owners, if you start one business, you're more than likely you're probably going to start another. Entrepreneurs, they don't just start one; they start multiple. Let's make that interaction a very good interaction for these folks, because then they'll want to do more. And I think if you look at our economy and diversifying our economy, that part makes me very excited. You look at what's happening in downtown Grand Forks, or what has happened in Fargo, in Bismarck, and Minot, and then the oil industry out west. Making that process as seamless as possible and enjoyable for a lot of folks, put a good taste in their mouth, so they want to come back and start a business here in North Dakota. That's what gets me really excited. Partnering with other state agencies, the Small Business Administration, the Department of Commerce, making data available so if someone's looking at North Dakota to come and start their business, we have that available in multiple parts, whether that's the Secretary of State's office or what other state agency, making that access available to these people and showing them, hey, North Dakota is the place for you to start your business. That's what gets me really excited.
One thing that Governor Burgum talked about when he was first elected in 2016, and I know his administration has talked a lot about, is not having especially in the IT area, not having duplicative efforts, right? And trying to create synergy and try to use between the different departments. And it is like that. I mean, sometimes there can be a lot of disparity. I think I don't know the right word for it, but a lot of difference from website to website when you're going across state government. Right now, I think a lot of it, each elected office, sort of manages their own thing. Do you think there's something to be said about trying to combine some of those efforts and giving, because from the outside looking in, I mean, to the voter, the state of North Dakota it's all the government of North Dakota, right? So why do I have all these different website experiences or different internet experiences when I'm trying to interact with my state government or get information? Do you think there's things we could do there to combine some of those efforts and to make it a more uniform experience for the public?
Absolutely. In the last couple of legislative sessions, the legislatures looked at IT unification. And that effort has been taking FTEs from different state agencies, sending them to NDIT, and having one central process there. I think it's been a policy of the legislature to unelected state agencies send most of those IT FTEs. Now we're really nerding out on the budget process here, Rob, so hang with me.
That's all right. Hey, this is an audience of nerds, so go ahead.
For sending those FTEs to NDIT. But with the state elected offices, it's been kind of the take of the legislature to say, hey, you know what, this is their elected office. They can do what they please. And it's their option to opt into the unification process. You look at the NDGOP website. That looks drastically different than the Secretary of State's website. Having one uniform system, I think, will help ease that process. How we get there, I have no idea. But what I do want to see is making it easier and less clunky for the public. It's not for the state agency to make it easier for them to run. It should be easier for the taxpayer to say, hey, I can navigate from one state agency to the other. And a lot of these work together. I'd imagine if you're on the NDGOP website and you're looking at driver's identification or licensing, that could take you to the central voter file, which then link you to the Secretary of State's website. If you're looking for, hey, how many businesses are there in the state of North Dakota with over 40 employees? If you're on the Secretary of State's website, will that take you to Commerce? Will Commerce website take you to the Secretary of State's office? Having things like that work seamlessly together, it just makes sense to make everything more uniform.
It really does. Well, I appreciate your time, Michael, and I appreciate your time, and good luck with the race coming up.
Hey, I appreciate it, Rob. For your listeners, early voting across the state of North Dakota has started today, Monday, June 6th. And, of course, primary date is June 14th. We've got my race in there, but also this is the final say for a lot of people in their school board races, their city commission races, their county commissioners races. The June primary kind of gets overlooked sometimes. Let's make voter turnout for November and June be equal. Let's get it as high as we can. So get out there and vote. You can go to the Secretary of State's website and find your polling location and get out there and have your say.
It really is easy to vote. I think sometimes people can be all the political folderol and everything. I think sometimes makes the voting process seem more intimidating than it really is. And listen, sometimes if you moved a lot or you're in a unique circumstance, I get it. Sometimes it can be a little bureaucratic maybe to get your ID sorted out. But for the vast majority of you, it's not that hard, right? I mean, the information's there. You really don't have a lot of good excuses. Get out there and vote. Michael, thanks for your time.
Hey, Rob, I appreciate it.
Want more political news like this? Visit inforum.news/port to get 3 months of unlimited access to our news network for only 99 cents a month. Don't wait. Get this limited time offer at inforum.news/port now.